Good morning. I have tried to stick to my assigned topic, as we see, manufactured terrorism then and now. My starting point, of course, is my book, 9/11 Synthetic Terror, Made in USA. And I stress again, made in USA. And if you see here, the 5th edition, which came out for the anniversary in 2011, is now up to 46 drills through which the 9/11 events were prepared and then executed. And of these 46 drills, which are listed exhaustively and discussed in the book, about half of them occurred on the day of 9/11. So it was the day densest in drills of all of American history or world history, as far as I know. And of course, every essential aspect of the 9/11 event is covered by a drill. It corresponds to a drill, which in my book means it was generated through a drill. Now, my approach has not found favor. It has not been widely shared, and I have to tell you, I'm puzzled, because this is how covert operations are executed. You design a drill that looks very much like what you want, and then the drill goes live. And instead of having a fake or pretend attack, it becomes a real attack. And that can be done with very small changes and having very few people aware of it. In the book, I also propose this conceptual scheme. And as you will note, I'm all about conceptual schemes. Not empiricist. Try to be empirical, that's good, but don't be empiricist, that's bad. Don't be like John Locke, right? Look at the world, but not through the eyes of John Locke or Hobbes or Hume or any of these people. And here we have the tripartite division, the patsies, the dupes, the useful idiots, fanatics, provocateurs, Oswalds, the professional killers, or technicians, the old boys, the asteroids, right, the hired killers that Perkins, I think, talks about in his book subsequent to this, and the moles. The moles are a network inside the government, but they're not a government network. It's not like Prussia, where government is a career, where people aspire to be permanent government officials. No, no, no. The US government is a revolving door. And the payoff comes in the private sector part. So it is not a government network fundamentally. It's a Wall Street private sector network that has penetrated the government. And this is fundamental because this is the part that the libertarians simply cannot understand. They see the government as a force on its own. So the patsies, the professional killers, are technicians. Probably technicians is good. And the moles. The government resources are accessed via drills, right? The resources for 9/11 are huge. No private sector entity really has all of them. The government does, but that's why you need the drill. The command center, privatized in the private sector, not subjected to government. State-sponsored false flag terrorism. False flag. And that's the big concept worldwide this week. And I want you to be of good cheer, because false flag is on the agenda. A lot of people in the world are going to know what that is and have learned it now. The drills. I have 46. I can't even name them all. I don't have time. You'll have to buy my book. I'll be out here. I'll be out here in the afternoon. No, it just can't be done. Counterterrorism. This is one of the drills that prepared it, right? SEADS, the Southeast Air Defense System, right? They helpfully put bin Laden's picture, or the picture of the actor who was playing bin Laden that week. Everyone participates. This was one that was going to start in Alaska, go across Canada, and get to New York. So it's an international drill. Now, you're going to have to bear with me, because I can't submit to the discipline of lists of facts. That's not my way. This is not a consensus report, right? It tries to be an egregious one-man report. I don't have any approved statements. Those things belong to the method of Aristotle. And I'm in the camp that will not go with Aristotle. So I tried to get that. I tried to get the red line across Aristotle's face, but I couldn't do that. So I did what I could. Instead, I go with the other school, the Platonic one, which is different. And remember, Plato's cave, right? If we think we get to certainty and we think we can establish all the facts, we have to remember that we are, in many ways, caught in the cave looking at the shadows that are projected on the wall. And of course, in our time, the shadow projected on the wall turned out to be 9/11. But 9/11 is an illusion. 9/11 is the intersection of the moles, the patsies, and the technicians, and not the reality that most people think. Now, I am happy to say that the power of that concept, the moles, the patsies, the technicians, and the drills, is strong enough to penetrate even this hostile book, right, Among the Truthers by Jonathan Kay. He actually tells you in there that there's the method of the moles, the patsies, the drills, and the technicians. So in spite of his hostility, in spite of everything else that he throws up, he says that's the method that has won out among many 9/11 activists. And of course, that became this debate on C-SPAN a year ago, April, which I believe is probably the main presence of 9/11 truth on U.S. national television last year. Maybe there were others, but that's certainly one of them. And the year before, I'm showing you these things to try to show that my method has some modest contributions to chalk up. In other words, it does get you somewhere. It does stir the pot to some extent. Here's The Guardian with our good friend Charlie Skelton. This was the Walker Street conference of 2 years ago. And if you want to get the drills in detail, I did the drills in excruciating detail at that conference. So get that. I think it's on tarpley.net. Anyway, this is Charlie Skelton, sorry. And this is not a slander. This is basically endorsing 9/11 truth. It was probably the best article for that anniversary. And also, around the same time, August 2 years ago, the Süddeutsche Zeitung. This is Munich, right? Munich, Stuttgart, places like this. Truth and insanity. Conspiracy theories about 9/11. And again, this is a little bit nastier, but it's not a slander. It actually entertains many, many facts. So this conceptual approach, which I recommend, does have a certain penetrating power, right? And here's my evidence. Now, the question always has been, will a government, will some powerful force in the world take up the cause of 9/11 truth and establish this on the world stage? And there were great hopes for Ahmadinejad. Here I am with Ahmadinejad at the beginning of last year. I just gave him my 9/11 book. Unfortunately, Ahmadinejad has now left office, and somehow this never gelled. But I think he was a person of goodwill who wanted to do it. And I would have many positive things to say about him as a scientist, as someone who promoted economic development, and not at all as the person that you've been told. But now, and this is a situation reflected in Mr. Gage's remarks, the remains of the 9/11 truth movement have to decide what their future will be. Will it be a narrowly focused, technical, and I would add, in many ways, apolitical research and activism effort, limited to 9/11 in isolation? And I think this, you get into the danger of antiquarianism. In other words, you begin to become fascinated by a moment frozen in amber. I don't think that's effective. I think the immense experience and sophistication and knowledge that has been built up here over these years would allow politically oriented researchers and activists to follow the unfolding series of covert operations and false flag events and denounce them and deflate them and refute them and try to counter them in the eyes of public opinion. And the big difference here is, instead of backward looking, this one is forward looking, because it says your fundamental task is, where's the next 9/11 coming from? And how do you be ready for that? And that is a completely different approach. Now, false flag. False flag is one of our fundamental concepts. And in the course of this past 2 or 3 week period, there's been more discussion of false flags than in the entire time up to now. This is the interview. Well, first of all, this is the president of Russia, V.V. Putin. And Putin, in his New York Times op-ed of a couple of days ago, says that the Syrian chemical weapons event, so-called, Goutha, was a false flag. As soon as it happened, the Russian Foreign Ministry said, this is a pre-planned provocation. At the end of the G20 meeting, Putin said, this was done by the rebels, the terrorists in Syria. And now he says, this was a false flag. So that's one false flag, Goutha. And he warns of another false flag. He says that another false flag is being prepared as an attack on Israel that will then be used to get the big war. Now, this is what we have to pay attention to. This is where we are at. We're now on the knife edge of a huge explosion. Here's Putin's text. Poison gas was used in Syria. Okay. But there's every reason to believe it was used not by the Syrian army, but by the opposition. And that means the rebels, the terrorists, the Al-Qaeda, Nusra, the emirs. Used by opposition forces to provoke intervention by their powerful foreign patrons. And it almost worked. And it still might work. Who would be siding with the fundamentalists? Reports that militants are preparing another attack, this time against Israel, cannot be ignored. Now, I can remember when Matt Sullivan and I would go to the White House in the spring of 2007 with signs saying, don't nuke Iran for Cheney's new 9/11. We were trying to, as best we could with our practically non-existent means, to inoculate public opinion against the coming false flag event. And now, it's a great power. It's a superpower. It's one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council that has embraced publicly the concept of the false flag event. Now, that's a real achievement, and you should, instead of worrying about how many people are in the room, consider this a piece of progress to which people here have contributed. And obviously, the KGB doesn't need lessons about false flag. They know about false flag. Any sophisticated person would. But the fact that this comes on the scene now, I think, is important. Now, Russia Today, their television, has been talking for days now, Syrian rebels plan a chemical attack on Israel from Assad-controlled territories. Now, this, in some ways, puts the ball in our court. How are you mobilizing? What are you doing about this? How are you getting the word out, right? How are you showing that the world is now under the shadow of World War III caused by a false flag, like Sarajevo, like the Gleiwitz radio station, right? You're going to have it a third time? It's time to agitate, but not in the backward-looking way, not the old research. You do that when you can, but to put this out. Say, look, I studied 9/11. I know what these things are, and this is what we do not want.